June 4th, 1942, 4:30 a.m. North Pacific Ocean, 200 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. The sea is black. Only the dim red lights inside the carrier Akagi break the darkness. On the flight deck, Japanese sailors move like shadows, pushing aircraft into position. Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers, Aichi D-3A dive bombers, Mitsubishi Zero fighters. Engines cough to life. The smell of aviation fuel drifts across the deck. Above them, the sky is still empty. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commander of Japan's 1st Carrier Strike Force, stands inside the bridge of Akagi, the man responsible for Pearl Harbor. 6 months earlier, he had shattered the United States Pacific Fleet. Now he intends to finish the job. Midway Atoll lies ahead, a small American outpost in the middle of the ocean. 2 runways, a few dozen aircraft, a tiny coral island. Nothing that should threaten the most powerful naval strike force on Earth. 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, each one carrying veteran pilots who had already conquered the Pacific. Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, Singapore, the Dutch East Indies. Everywhere the Imperial Japanese Navy had gone, victory followed. The officers on the bridge feel it. Confidence, almost inevitability. The Americans, they believe, are still weak, still stunned from Pearl Harbor. Nagumo checks his watch. 4:45 a.m. Launch the first attack wave. One by one, aircraft roll forward into the darkness. A Zero fighter roars down the deck and disappears into the morning sky. Then another, then another. Soon the sky fills with engines. Over 100 Japanese aircraft rise into the dawn, heading toward Midway. Below them, the carrier fleet turns slowly into the wind. The attack will destroy the American airfields. Then the second wave will finish the job. After that, if the Americans dare to respond, Nagumo's carriers will destroy them too. It seems inevitable. But there is something Nagumo does not know, something hidden beyond the horizon, because far to the northeast, 3 American carrier types are already waiting: USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, USS Yorktown. They are not supposed to be here. Japanese intelligence believed they were hundreds of miles away. Some believed one had even been sunk. But Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, had already read Japan's plans. American codebreakers had cracked the Japanese naval cipher. They knew Midway would be attacked, and now they were waiting, silently, patiently, like hunters. Back above Midway, the Japanese strike force approaches the island. Anti-aircraft guns erupt from the ground. Black bursts of flak fill the sky. American fighters scramble upward, outdated F-2A Buffaloes and F-4 Wildcats. They climb desperately to intercept the incoming bombers. The battle begins. Japanese dive bombers scream down toward the airfield. Bombs fall. Explosions rip across the island. Fuel tanks ignite. Hangars collapse. But something is wrong. The island is still fighting. American aircraft keep rising. The first attack wave radios Nagumo. Enemy airfield not destroyed. A second strike will be required. Nagumo frowns. His reserve aircraft are currently armed with torpedoes, prepared for a possible naval battle. Now they must be rearmed with bombs for another attack on Midway. Inside the carrier decks of the aircraft, crews begin the dangerous process. Torpedoes are removed. Bombs are rolled into position.
Fuel lines snake across the deck. Aircraft are packed wing to wing inside the carrier hangars. Hundreds of gallons of aviation fuel, stacks of bombs, rows of armed aircraft, a floating powder keg. And then, a radio message arrives. A Japanese scout plane has finally spotted something. Its transmission crackles across the bridge. Enemy ships sighted. Nagumo freezes. American ships? Here? His officers exchange uneasy glances. For the first time that morning, uncertainty creeps into the room. Because now Nagumo faces an impossible decision. His aircraft are half rearmed, his decks are cluttered with fueled planes, and somewhere beyond the horizon, American carriers may already be launching their own strike. But Nagumo still does not know the most dangerous truth of all. At this exact moment, American dive bombers are already on their way, and within the next hour, 4 Japanese carriers will be fighting for their lives.
June 4th, 1942, 6:10 a.m. USS Enterprise, flight deck. The sun is rising now. Orange light spreads across the endless Pacific. On the deck of the USS Enterprise, the atmosphere is tense but controlled. Pilots climb into their cockpits, while deck crews move quickly between spinning propellers. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, leader of the dive bomber squadron VB-6, studies the ocean horizon. Somewhere out there, the Japanese fleet is waiting. But no one on Enterprise actually knows where. American reconnaissance had spotted the enemy earlier, but the information was incomplete. The Pacific is enormous. A fleet can disappear into it in minutes. Yet there is no time to hesitate. Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance, commanding the American task force, gives the order: launch the strike. One by one, aircraft begin rolling down the carrier deck. Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers, Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo planes, F-4F Wildcat fighters. Engines roar. Aircraft lift into the air and circle above the carrier, forming groups before heading west toward the unknown. The pilots know the odds. They are flying hundreds of miles into enemy territory. If they miss the Japanese fleet, they will likely run out of fuel before returning. Still, they push forward, because if they succeed, the war in the Pacific could change today. Meanwhile, far below the clouds, back with the Japanese fleet, Admiral Nagumo is still wrestling with his decision. The situation has become chaotic. Inside the carrier hangars, aircraft are being rearmed again. Torpedoes that had been removed are now being rolled back toward the planes. Bombs lie scattered across the deck. Fuel hoses snake across the floor. Everywhere, crews are rushing. The carriers are in a dangerous state. Aircraft half prepared, weapons exposed, fuel everywhere. And then the alarms begin. Enemy aircraft approaching. American torpedo bombers have arrived. The first wave comes from USS Hornet. Slow, low-flying TBD devastators skim the surface of the ocean. They are painfully outdated aircraft, slow, poorly armored, and they are flying directly toward one of the most powerful air defense systems in the world. Japanese Zero fighters dive toward them. Within seconds, the sky erupts. Machine guns flash, tracer rounds tear through the air. The American torpedo planes are slaughtered. One by one, they fall into the sea. Pilot Ensign George Gay watches as the aircraft around him explode. His squadron disappears in minutes. Yet the devastators keep flying straight toward the carriers. They know their chances are almost zero, but if even one torpedo hits, the mission will be worth it. None of them reach the target.
Every single plane is shot down. The attack is a disaster. But something critical has happened. The Japanese Combat Air Patrol, the Zero fighters protecting the fleet, has been dragged down to low altitude chasing the torpedo planes. And now, the sky above the fleet is suddenly empty. High above, 19,000 feet. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey is running out of fuel. His dive bombers have been searching the ocean for nearly an hour. No Japanese fleet, just endless water. Pilots begin to worry. If they turn back now, they might barely reach their carriers. If they keep searching, they might never return. McCluskey studies the sea below. Then he notices something unusual. A lone Japanese destroyer speeding north. It is leaving a long white wake behind it. The destroyer Arashi. Moments earlier, it had been chasing an American submarine. Now it is racing back to rejoin the fleet. McCluskey stares at the wake. A destroyer would only move like that if it were rushing back to its carriers. He makes his decision. Follow it. The dive bombers turn and follow the white line across the ocean. Minutes pass. Fuel gauges keep dropping. Then suddenly, one of the pilots shouts over the radio, "Ships dead ahead!" Through a break in the clouds, the entire Japanese carrier strike force appears below. 4 massive carriers cutting through the water. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. They look peaceful from above. Tiny aircraft are still moving across the decks. Japanese fighters are low over the ocean chasing torpedo bombers. And above the fleet, there is almost nothing. For a few brief moments, the sky is wide open. McCluskey knows this is the chance. He grips the control stick. Below him are the most powerful warships in the Pacific. And at this exact moment, they are completely vulnerable. He gives the order. Attack. The dive bombers roll over. Their noses point straight down toward the carriers. The ocean begins rushing upwards. And below, the Japanese fleet has no idea what is about to fall out of the sky.
June 4th, 1942, 10:22 a.m. 19,000 feet above the Japanese carrier fleet. The world suddenly tilts. Inside the cockpit of his Douglas SBD Dauntless, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey pushes the nose of his aircraft straight down. The horizon disappears. Only ocean. Only ships. Only the massive gray deck of the carrier Kaga, growing larger every second. The dive bomber begins screaming toward the sea. Air howls across the wings. The Dauntless shudders as the dive brakes deploy. Behind McCluskey, dozens of American dive bombers follow him into the attack. The sky above the Japanese fleet fills with falling aircraft. For the Japanese sailors below, the first sign of danger is a shout. "Dive bombers!" Heads snap upward. Small, dark shapes are falling from the clouds. Then the sirens begin. Anti-aircraft guns erupt across the fleet. Orange flashes burst from the decks. Shells explode around the descending bombers. But the attack has come from too high, too suddenly. The Japanese Zero fighters are still low over the ocean, chasing the torpedo bombers. There are almost no interceptors above the fleet. The carriers are exposed. The attack on Kaga. McCluskey steadies his aircraft. The carrier Kaga fills his gun sight. The deck below is crowded with aircraft. Some are being refueled. Some are being armed with bombs and torpedoes. Fuel hoses stretch across the deck.
Mechanics run between planes. They look tiny from this height. McCluskey waits. Closer. Closer. At 1,500 feet, he releases the bomb. The Dauntless pulls violently out of the dive. The aircraft groans under the force. Below him, the bomb falls toward the carrier. Seconds later, a blinding flash. The bomb smashes through the flight deck. It detonates deep inside the hangar where fueled aircraft are waiting. The explosion ignites aviation fuel. Fire erupts instantly. And then another bomb hits, and another. Within moments, Kaga is burning from bow to stern. Akagi, the flagship. Nearby, the carrier Akagi, flagship of Admiral Nagumo, is also under attack. Lieutenant Richard Best, one of the most experienced dive bomber pilots in the U.S. Navy, lines up his aircraft. Akagi is maneuvering violently, trying to avoid the bombs. It almost works. Several bombs narrowly miss, but Best's bomb does not. It punches through the flight deck near the carrier's centerline. Inside the hangar, aircraft packed wing to wing explode into flames. Fuel ignites. Bombs begin detonating. Within moments, the flagship of the Japanese fleet becomes an inferno. On the bridge, Admiral Nagumo watches in stunned silence. The most powerful carrier force in the world has just been crippled in minutes. Soryu, the third victim. At the same moment, dive bombers from USS Yorktown are attacking the carrier Soryu. 3 bombs strike almost simultaneously. One detonates in the hangar deck. Another explodes near armed torpedo planes. The result is catastrophic. Flames erupt across the carrier. Black smoke pours into the sky. Soryu is finished. 5 minutes. The entire attack lasts only minutes. But when the smoke clears, 3 Japanese carriers are dying. Kaga, Akagi, Soryu, burning wrecks in the middle of the Pacific. Japanese sailors jump into the ocean to escape the flames. Explosions continue to rip through the ships. Fuel tanks ignite. Ammunition detonates. The sky fills with black smoke columns rising thousands of feet into the air. Moments earlier, this fleet had dominated the Pacific Ocean. Now, half of it is on fire. Shock on both sides. Even the American pilots cannot believe what they are seeing. 3 carriers destroyed almost instantly. It feels impossible. Back on the flagship Japanese, officers rush through the smoke-filled corridors. Damage reports arrive one after another. Uncontrollable fires. Hangar deck destroyed. Aircraft exploding. The carriers cannot be saved. But one ship remains, the 4th carrier, Hiryu. Unlike the others, Hiryu had been positioned slightly farther away from the formation. It escaped the initial dive bomber attack, and its flight deck is still operational. Inside the ship, Japanese pilots are already climbing into their aircraft. They know what must happen next. Revenge. Because the battle is not over. And within the next hour, American carriers will begin burning too.
June 4th, 1942, 11 a.m. Imperial Japanese carrier Hiryu, flight deck. Smoke already stains the horizon. From the deck of Hiryu, sailors can clearly see the towering black columns rising from the other carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu. 3 giants of the Imperial Navy are burning. Men on Hiryu stare in disbelief.
Only hours earlier, this fleet had ruled the Pacific. Now the air smells of oil and smoke. Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, commander aboard Hiryu, does not hesitate. He understands the situation immediately. The battle is not lost yet. One carrier remains, and if that carrier strikes quickly enough, the Americans might still be destroyed. Launch the attack. Deck crews spring into action. Aircraft engines roar to life across the flight deck. Aichi D-3A Val dive bombers are rolled into position. Pilots strap into their cockpits, tightening harnesses with calm discipline. Many of them know the odds. They can see the burning wrecks of their sister ships on the horizon. Still, they climb into the sky, because the mission remains the same. Find the American carriers, destroy them. The target appears. Across the ocean, the American task force moves cautiously. Admiral Raymond Spruance knows the battle is far from finished. If even one Japanese carrier survived the dive bomber attack, a counterstrike would be coming. Radar operators scan the sky. Minutes pass. Then a voice breaks the quiet inside the radar room. Large enemy formation approaching. The alarm spreads across the fleet. Air raid! Air raid! On the flight deck of USS Yorktown, anti-aircraft gunners rush to their stations. Wildcat fighters roar into the air to intercept the incoming attackers. Soon dark shapes appear on the horizon. Japanese dive bombers. The attack on Yorktown. The Japanese pilots descend toward the American fleet. Anti-aircraft guns erupt. Shell bursts fill the sky. Wildcat fighters slash through the formation, firing bursts into the bombers. But several aircraft break through. They dive directly toward USS Yorktown. Yorktown had already been damaged weeks earlier during the Battle of the Coral Sea. Incredibly, American repair crews had fixed the ship in just 72 hours at Pearl Harbor. Now the carrier faces another test. Japanese dive bombers scream downward. The first bomb misses. The second one strikes. A massive explosion rips into Yorktown's deck. Another bomb follows seconds later. The carrier shudders violently. Flames erupt. Smoke pours into the sky. But Yorktown does not die. Damage control crews race through the corridors. Fire hoses spray water across the deck. Within an hour, the fires are largely contained. Engines still turn. The carrier is still afloat. To the Japanese pilots circling above, the ship appears crippled, but it is not finished, and the battle continues. Hiryu strikes again. Back aboard Hiryu, Admiral Yamaguchi prepares another strike, this time torpedo bombers. The pilots launch quickly. Soon they locate the American fleet again. They descend low over the ocean. Anti-aircraft guns thunder. Torpedoes drop into the water. Two of them strike Yorktown. The carrier lurches violently. Water floods into the hull. This time, the damage is too severe. Yorktown begins listing heavily to one side. The order comes: abandon ship. American sailors climb down ropes and jump into the ocean as the carrier slowly rolls. The sea around the ship fills with men floating in life jackets. From a distance, the Japanese pilots believe they have sunk another carrier. They report success. But what they do not know is this: Yorktown was the only carrier they hit. Enterprise and Hornet remain untouched. And now the Americans know something critical. One Japanese carrier still survives, Hiryu, which means somewhere beyond the horizon, the last carrier of Japan's once invincible strike force is preparing for more attacks. But the American dive bombers are already searching the ocean again, and soon they will find it.
June 4, 1942, 3:30 p.m. High above the Pacific, American dive bombers searching the horizon. The ocean below is endless. Blue water, white clouds, nothing else. Inside their SBD Dauntless dive bombers, American pilots scan the sea with tired eyes. They have been searching for hours. Somewhere out there, the last Japanese carrier is still alive. If it escapes, the battle could continue tomorrow, and tomorrow might not be so lucky. Fuel gauges slowly fall. Engines drone steadily. Then suddenly, a voice breaks over the radio. Carrier sighted. Heads turn. Through a gap in the clouds, a single gray warship appears. Long flight deck. Destroyers racing beside it. Smoke drifting lightly into the air. Hiryu, the last survivor of Japan's once unstoppable carrier force. The final attack. The American formation tightens. Dive bombers from USS Enterprise and USS Yorktown begin positioning for the attack. Below them, Hiryu is already maneuvering violently. Japanese sailors have spotted the incoming aircraft. Alarms echo across the ship. Anti-aircraft guns erupt along the deck. Black flak bursts explode in the sky. But the American bombers keep coming. One by one, they roll into their dives. The aircraft tip forward, noses pointing straight toward the carrier. Air screams past the wings. The ocean rushes upward. Below them, Hiryu grows larger. Japanese gunners fire desperately. Shells burst around the falling aircraft, but the bombers hold their dive. Closer, closer. At the last moment, bombs release. Impact. The first bomb strikes near the forward elevator. The explosion rips open the flight deck. Flames burst from the hangar below. Moments later, a second bomb hits near the center of the carrier. Fuel ignites instantly. Aircraft packed inside the hangar erupt into fire. Then the third bomb lands. The deck buckles. Smoke and flames surge upward. Within seconds, Hiryu is burning. The last Japanese carrier in the battle is mortally wounded. Admiral Yamaguchi's choice. Inside the carrier, chaos spreads. Fire races through the hangar decks. Ammunition detonates. Explosions shake the ship. Damage control crews fight desperately to contain the flames, but the fires are too large. Too many aircraft. Too much fuel. The carrier cannot be saved. On the bridge, Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi watches the flames spread across the deck. He understands what has happened. Japan's elite carrier force has been destroyed in a single day. The balance of power in the Pacific has just shifted forever. Officers urge him to abandon ship, but Yamaguchi refuses. Along with the carrier's captain, Captain Tomeo Kaku, they choose to remain aboard. As the crew evacuates, the two men stay behind. They salute the burning flight deck and wait. Night falls over the Pacific. As darkness spreads across the ocean, the battle slowly fades. 4 Japanese carriers, the core of the fleet that attacked Pearl Harbor, are gone. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. Thousands of sailors and pilots are lost with them. Across the ocean, American ships continue rescuing survivors from the water around Yorktown. The carrier itself still floats through the night, battered but alive. For the first time since the war began, the Imperial Japanese Navy has suffered a catastrophic defeat. But the full meaning of what happened today is only beginning to become clear, because this battle did more than sink ships. It shattered the illusion that Japan controlled the Pacific. And from this moment forward, the war would begin turning in the opposite direction.